Hello everyone, welcome to a different setting. We are home today where I promise that I will answer all your questions on our annual end of the year Q&A. So grab yourself a little cup of coffee and we should start. I compiled all the questions into categories and theme because there's a lot of redundant questions that we'll tackle one by one. And if you want the full version with all the questions, especially the technical ones, feel free to check out our Patreon where I answer every single one because we receive quite a lot of questions and treating them in just one video is not enough. So that's why I categorize them into few sections. But for the more detailed one, check out our Patreon account. Let's start with the most asked question is what's your favorite? So what's your favorite coffee of the year? What's your favorite coffee except yours? What is your favorite brewing method? It was a lot about my personal favorites, right? And so let's ask this question. My favorite coffee of the year from our lineup was the Potosi Sidra hybrid washed. It was from Granja La Esperanza, and it's probably one of the cleanest, sweetest, and complex coffee I had, with floral but also very Mediterranean-like fresh fruit characteristics that really reminded me of that fresh, sort of sunny and juicy cup of coffee and vibes. I believe it was the one used also by the World Brewers Cup champion, a Sidra from Granja La Esperanza in Colombia, and that was my personal favorite of this year. Now, what is my favorite coffee besides Memli coffee, besides the one I'm roasting? Because I roast all our coffee, of course, I drink a lot of it and sample a lot of coffee, but also drink other people's coffee. I think that's something really important, is make sure to always, especially for coffee roasters, but also coffee professionals, trying other kinds of coffee that maybe you are not used to, or maybe as a sign of inspiration, or see how people deal with certain origin or certain regions, for example. And my favorite was Karagoto or Karogoto from Team Wendelbo in Norway. It's probably one of the best still Kenya, washed Kenya I've tried. If you ever wonder how it tastes like, it tastes so sweet and fruity, you feel that it's a natural process, but it's of course a reminiscent of a classic Kenya with those berries, those florality, but the sweetness is such that it's kind of crazy to think that it's actually a washed process. Well, you can tell based on the acidity, of course, but the sweetness is really prominent in that coffee. What method now? Because this year, especially on this YouTube channel, I review a lot of different videos. What method do I use on a daily basis? What are my favorite methods? I'm still using V60. Most of the time, still my daily driver is a V60. Now I have to say that I incorporated more and more Oria for my flat bottom brewer. As you know, I've done a showdown of all the flat bottom brewer to find the one that matched the best the coffee experience I'm looking for, and the Oria was to me the sort of best in the flat bottom brewer section. So my daily driver is still a V60, but I would say probably 50% V60, let's say 30% the Oria, and the remaining 20% will be either espresso or hybrid Jezve that I still enjoy, but mostly V60 and the Oria. And I'm still using, for on a daily basis, the Abaca filters. I do, however, for the flat bottom brewer, only use Sibarist, and I just tried a new hybrid B3, and I see huge improvement on my V60. So I'm slowly using more and more Sibarist filters for all my coffees. Regarding the Paragon, I use it as an experiment, or when I have like supernatural anaerobic coffees. I really love the Paragon because it's kind of mute down a little bit that tartness, that little fermenty character, and it's just to create more balance. It tastes good without, but it's just a different sort of approach to it. So my daily driver is still pour overs. With the coffee we have mostly, I would say, it changes from having only sort of the washed Guatemalan Central American to maybe natural African coffees to those premium coffees. I do not drink too much of geishas, for example, because don't get high on your own supply, and those are things for you to enjoy. Of course, I enjoy all those nice brews, but if I drink it, I'm not selling it, and people cannot enjoy all those different flavors. So from time to time, I would say once a week, I brew myself a very nice brew, like a limited one. But most of the time, I'm using either our Ethiopia Natural, our Guatemala. My daily favorite is the Ecuador Típica, Natural Típica number 5 from Pilco Caja. It's such a clean and sweet cup of coffee that goes with every method: V60, Oria, the April Brewer, Origami, even on espresso, on Ibrik Jezve. It's such a versatile coffee that it's the one that I've used the most this year. So that was about sort of the method that I tried. And another sort of favorite section is about what origin surprised me this year. I have sampled a lot of coffees, and I would say the origin that surprised me the most was recently I sampled some coffee from Tanzania, and I tried a geisha from Tanzania as well as SL28 Pacamara, and I was really surprised by the new harvest of Tanzanian coffees. And so check it out. Stay tuned. We may get Tanzania next year, because it was really surprising working with a single farmer on that project. So I would say origin that surprised me the most was Tanzania. Other than that, always great coffee from Pilco Caja, from Colombia, from Panama. The Guatemala is much cleaner than other years, and so we got pretty good, pretty lucky this year, I will say, in terms of flavor and taste. But in terms of surprises, I will put Tanzania here. Maybe Honduras as well, but I was really surprised by Tanzania. Like, you expect some flavors sometimes, but in Tanzania, I wasn't expecting that clean aspect. Okay, so that was about sort of my personal favorites. We will come back to Memli coffee and more personal question later on, but here there was a question about what do you do when you have few beans left. That happens a lot because as roasters we have different bag size, sometimes 150 grams, sometimes 200 grams, 250, 227, 8 ounce, 300 grams, 340 grams, 340 grams, 16 ounces. So all those beans and weights will yield different cups for you based on how much coffee you are brewing. Are you brewing 12 grams, 15 grams, 20 grams, 25 grams, 30 grams, 60 grams? And so at the end, what happened a lot is you have few beans left. Like recently I have one of my bags from Ethiopia. I had only sort of 8 grams or 7 grams left. What do you do with that? That's an excellent question. One thing you can do is to brew yourself a jezve, which is beautiful, and you are going to use the entire bag. You're not going to waste anything. So if you have a jezve Ibrik, and you're always a little bit skeptical about the taste, try it. Just try it. Get yourself a nice Brewing, a nice Jezve, and try this method, because I believe that it's one of the purest form of drinking coffee, similar to cupping with the grounds, of course, but it's a way to kind of taste the coffee as it is. The second way of doing it, you can create a blend. So that can be a little fun experiment where you have 7 grams of one coffee, 6 grams of another one, and you're trying to create basically a blend of 12 grams, 15 grams. That can also be an option. The third way of doing it is to once again blend it with something similar. Let's take that Ethiopian natural once again. You have 7 grams left, and you have let's say a Panama coffee arriving, Honduras washed, and maybe a Colombian natural. You will actually put the Ethiopian natural with the Colombian natural or the Panama natural, depending on the profile. So try to blend it with something similar so you have a similar vibe. It's different than the second option, which was blending with something different to create sort of a new blend. This is just to kind of ease the way in to still drink the coffee and not waste your beans. And the fourth way of doing it is to brew it. I know 7 grams is not a lot, but it's a good way to use maybe your AeroPress or your drip bags, or just any other tool in small quantity. It can be a good way to just like a little pick me up in the afternoon without using too much beans and too much water. So 7 grams, it's kind of hard, I know, but it's doable. Okay, so next question now. Next question now. How do you implement sustainability? Excellent question. We have a very thorough waste sort of rule and policy where we do not waste any beans. For example, all the flushing between coffees, between dial-in, I always reuse them for my cup tasters training, for example. So all the coffees I always use, like I don't grind new beans when I'm doing an experiment or I'm doing a palate training, for example. I use pre-ground coffee throughout the day. When we are dialing on our espresso class, we're using the flushed grounds that you flush between 2 grind sizes to actually practice latte art later on. We also practice latte art with soap and water sometimes in the beginning, just to get used to that frothing motion before moving on to the milk. Those are what we implement on a daily basis. The other part is for our sustainable packaging and bagging, as well as shipping options. We try to pick the most sustainable shipping options for our subscribers and our partners. And one thing we are doing is dealing directly with the farmer and working with fewer importers in order to increase the volume per origin, instead of pulling coffee from all over the place, because shipping, freight, those cost some money but also impact a lot the environment. And so instead of getting things from everywhere, that's how we did in the beginning. And then we learn by observing what can we do better. We can actually pull several origin in one port of entry and then pull all those coffees to our roastery at once, instead of having different trucks coming in at different period of the time. So that's still a work in progress that we're trying to improve, and it's an interesting point of the supply chain as well. The other part of the process is roasting, that we now do through our lowering or our ikawa and a bullet for our small orders or premium lots or sample roasting, so using less and less gas and more renewable sources of energy for electricity. Also, you may have noticed that we do not use any paper cups or any throwable things. We try to use, mostly reusable thing. It of course requires much more cleaning, but we prefer that option over sort of single-use items. As for our tasting, our workshops, our educational programs. And last thing is we tend to also order and source. And last thing is that we tend to source with. And last thing is that we tend to source coffee from regenerative farming, biodynamic farming, or organic ones. They are not all certified, almost none of them, I think, except the Ethiopian one. That is because it costs a lot of money for the farmer to get certified. And so, but we make sure that everything is produced according to the nature. Everything is produced without. Everything is produced without herbicide, pesticides, and bunch of chemicals, and it's built solely on trust, of course. And the more we trust the farmers, the more the farmers trust us, and the more we trust the coffee consumers, and the more the coffee consumers can trust us. So it's really a trust-based relationship with everyone, and that we strive to make, especially in the next year in 2024, where absolutely all our coffee is going to be directly traded with the producer. So exciting about next year. Which comes down to the next final two questions, and then the rest will be detailed more in Patreon. What new origin are you going to source? So that's where I'm like an open book, and I'm always welcoming new origins and new processes, always willing to try new things. One thing for sure, Tanzania will be there next year. We're looking at Bolivia and Costa Rica to look directly with the single farmer. And then Ecuador as usual, Guatemala as usual, Ethiopia, Kenya, Colombia, of course, and Rwanda will be back next year as well. Actually, in the end of this year, Brazil will be part of the offering, and then who knows? I would love to start, and then I'm hoping to get our first Southeast Asian coffee next year. So stay tuned. Everything can change once again. We have to adapt to the circumstances, the environment, the coffee, but also the economy, everything. So stay tuned for upcoming releases. Now, for sure, we will have Tanzania. We're looking at Bolivia, at Costa Rica. We have all our classics from Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Guatemala, Ecuador. Panama. We will have also Panama next year. But always open for new origin and potential Southeast Asian coffee next year. And last question, what's the future of coffee education, Memli, and the workshops? As you know, Memli Coffee Lab started as a studio in London with our coffee tasting in 2017. That is now still ongoing every Saturday, where we provide this tasting of 2 hours in 4 flights, where you taste different origin, different processes, method of extraction, and cup shapes. And that's changed throughout the year as well. From that, we released brewing workshops, pour-over, advanced pour-over, espresso, hybrid jezve, any sort of hands-on experience. Then we start opening up more advanced coffee tasting and professional coffee tasting in order to kind of develop this tasting skill with people who wanted to develop that aspect of their lives. And we just started to launch roasting workshops as well as the Memli experience. So for the coffee education next year, we are going to first of all develop the roasting aspect of it. We're going to have more roasting classes as well as sort of commercial roasting on the lowering versus the home roasting, which will be on the bullet. The commercial roasting will include sampling with the ikawa and having sort of this exercise of receiving a coffee, sampling it, profiling it to match sure it matches the sample profile, and that exercise is something we do on a daily basis at Memli Coffee Lab to make sure that the production roast match the profile roast, right? So that's something we will launch next year, is the production roasting or commercial roasting class. I don't know how I will call that. The second, moving on to brewing, that will be online masterclass, so online brewing classes, and that will be through videos and coffee samples and minerals. So everything will be shipped. We try to reach more than just our workshop and warehouse, because in our facility we are limited to 2 people for espresso and only 4 for pour-overs. But we would love more people to attend and also learn about it, whether you are visiting or local, or you are somewhere else in the world. I still want people to learn as well, have the opportunity to learn. So we are going to put the pour-over workshops as well as maybe the French press workshop and the Ibrik Jezve workshop online. For espresso, a bit more complicated because machines are a little bit different, and I like to have this hands-on experience on espresso and latte art, which comes down to the roasting, online brewing, sensory. So for sensory, we have this three level: the tasting, the advanced, and the professional. And we are going to take it once again online with a virtual tasting. So usually we do that with teams and companies, but I'm going to create a virtual video with the coffee sample that will be sent whenever you are ordering that workshop, and then you can actually taste with just yourself or a bunch of friends if you want to share the drip packs. So you can have this an hour and a half tasting of 3 different flights, different origin, different processes, and different roasts. So it's a good way to learn about coffee in an hour and a half at your own pace, and that will include, of course, the coffee, instruction about the car, about tasting, about how to brew, as well as some little gift and little how do you call it? The little swags, right? So that is the virtual tasting about the specialty coffee tasting, and we're going to launch the coffee sommelier program. So the coffee sommelier program will be both in person and online, and that's sort of a way to it will be very similar to the Q grading. Of course, it's not accredited, but what I wanted to create is a educational program that not just include the sensory. Yes, I mean, if you take our sensory, advanced, professional, a lot of things are similar to the SCA certifications as well as the Q. But what is missing in those sensory programs is the hospitality aspect of it, that it covers often in the brewing class on the SCA brewing or SCA barista briefly, right? But very briefly. Here in the coffee sommelier, I actually took the knowledge that I gained from classes in chocolate tasting or in wine tasting and apply it to coffee. and that will include things like that are already implemented in the Q or in SCA, such as green grading, a little bit of roasts, tasting, processes, origins, all those sort of coffee related tasting and exercises, but also how to communicate flavors, how to recognize a taste, right? When you are tasting blindly, how do you separate the different elements of the tasting? The variety, the process, the origin, the terroir, the roast, and the brew. So by tasting, almost like a sommelier who would try to describe and pinpoint the origin of a wine, we can do something similar in coffee. That will be a trial. I'm gonna try this for the first 3 months, and when I found that it's actually relevant, I will launch it to the public, where we will kind of taste and learn how to describe a coffee in front of audiences, because there's different kind of audience. Maybe you're new to coffee, maybe you're a little bit more advanced, maybe you are like a pro. And so as a sommelier or Q grader, we should be able to communicate a coffee to different audiences and provide different information that will be relevant to that particular person, right? A total beginner won't understand anything if you start talking about minerality of and ppms and rpms of the brewers, for example, right? All those things. And so tasting a coffee will be more act of recognizing what flavors are impacted by what part of the process, knowing that most of the flavors is impacted by the farm, the variety, the elevation, the terroir, the process, then the roast, and then the brew. So it will be in that sort of order of tasting. And we'll do that also, and the last part will be about, so that will be the coffee part on the sommelier, which will be similar with the green grading, the roast, the processes, the sort of explanation part. Then there will be a service part. How do you serve coffee? Glasswares. So we've done a lot of research on glasswares, and out there is a lot about glasswares and colors. I'm just going to consolidate everything into a little module on glasswares. And the last part will be about pairing, coffee and food pairing that we started about 5 years ago. And here there will be a little more detail about when a barista or a bartender or a front of house is serving coffee, what should we suggest in terms of dessert or just food, for example. So that will be the last part of this coffee sommelier program. I think it will be a 3 to 5 days probably. Program. It's a lot to cover, but I want to create sort of our signature curriculum next year. So that will be the future of the coffee education. And then the last part will be the Memli experience. So the Memli experience was dedicated to coffee and food pairing, mostly coffee and chocolate pairing. And we slowly develop more the chocolate into actually baked goods. Now it's almost like coffee, baked goods, and chocolate incorporated in the baked goods. But next year we are going to do more savory aspect of it, as well as a mixology, cocktail, and play with different sensory elements like sound, touch, and sight. So it will be not just cacao and coffee, it will be coffee and a lot of different things. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to continue learning and me answering more questions, check out our Patreon, where I will answer the last few questions. Thank you very much again. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and see you next time for more questions.